Learning how to cook has never been more accessible, yet somehow we've never been worse at it. We have entire shelves of cookbooks, thousands of recipes saved, but we've also got Pinterest boards, TikTok tutorials, YouTube videos. And yet at 5:30, we're standing in the kitchen thinking, what am I making for dinner tonight? And we say this as food is going bad in the fridge, with things that we fully intended to cook. We're buying ingredients for one specific recipe and then never using them again. And somehow dinner still feels like a chore. Now, most people think that the solution is simple. I just need better recipes. I need to be more organized. I actually need to stick to the plan. So what do? We buy another cookbook. We save another video. That looks good. Or we screenshot another recipe and we try again next week. And next week comes. And nothing changes. Because you still don't know how to cook without looking something up. You still don't know why something works. And you still don't fully trust yourself in the kitchen. So here's the part no one says out loud. You don't actually know how to cook. You know how to follow instructions, and there's a difference. Because the second that you don't have the exact ingredients, the exact timing, the exact steps in front of you, everything falls apart. And that ain't cooking, that's dependency. And now I'm gonna say something that might make people feel uncomfortable. Modern recipes, and especially modern cookbooks, are the reason you feel stuck. But it's not because they're bad, it's because they were never designed to teach you how to think. So in this video, I'm gonna show you why cookbooks feel helpful, but actually keep you dependent. What people did before recipes took over the kitchen, and the exact shift that takes cooking from stressful and confusing to something that actually makes sense. Because once you see this, you'll never look at a cookbook the same again. Because the wild part is that the more you rely on recipes, the harder cooking actually becomes. We live in a time where food content is everywhere, and cooking shows are wildly familiar in American culture. About half of Americans watch cooking shows at least occasionally, and those shows don't just entertain people, they shape what we buy. Research cited in a recent review found that 57% of viewers said they purchased food because of something they saw on a cooking show, 36% bought a small gadget, and 24% bought a cookbook. So to me, that's signaling that we're surrounded by food media, we're surrounded by recipes, we're surrounded by instructions. And yet, a shocking number of people feel lost when dinner becomes their responsibility. That should tell you something. Because if the endless flood of recipes was teaching people how to cook, we'd feel more confident, not more dependent, and that is the fallacy of the modern cookbook. It sells itself as a tool of freedom, but for most people, it creates this strange kind of dependence. But let me clarify, this isn't because recipes are evil or cookbooks are inherently bad. No, it's more so because modern cookbooks are built to solve the wrong problem, which is they're normally built to help you make a dish, not create a kitchen life. And that is a very different thing because modern cookbooks tend to orbit around novelty. You know what I mean? Your air fryer, your slow cooker, your Dutch oven, your sheet pan, 30-minute meals, viral pasta, your one-pot soup era, your clean eating phase, your high protein phase, your sourdough phase. And some of that is useful, okay? I'm not denying that. And yes, modern cookbooks can be beautiful. They can be inspiring. They can be easier to follow. They include beautiful photography, a friendly layout, and clearer instructions than older books ever did. But clarity is not the same thing as competent. But that's where people can get fooled because a cookbook can feel incredibly helpful in the moment, while still failing to make you better over time, and that's the trap. So it's like you make one recipe and then another, but you're still outsourcing the thinking. You're still told what to buy, what to make, how much to use, what order to do it in, what done looks like. And so the minute a recipe breaks, you break with it. And so that's what I mean when I say that's not mastery, that's borrowed confidence. And here's the part where history gets really interesting because what we think of now as cookbooks was not what cookbooks originally were. Early cookbooks were often sparse, practical, and written for people who already had some lived kitchen knowledge. In fact, the Library of Congress notes that those early cookbooks lacked the lush photography and the detailed specificity that we associate with modern books, and instead often assumed that readers already knew the basics. One example they gave is from Hannah Glass and a recipe that simply says, essentially, cook until it's enough. Read that again. Cook until it's enough. That kind of instruction would terrify a beginner. But it also reveals something important. The old kitchen expected judgment. The modern kitchen expects obedience. That's a huge difference. Because before food media became this giant category of entertainment and consumption, cooking knowledge traveled in a much older way through observation, repetition, correction, household rhythm, oral tradition. In fact, culinary historians noted that early modern recipes circulated not only in print, but also through manuscript and oral tradition. In other words, people didn't learn how to cook by buying every cookbook. They learned by being near the work, by watching, learning, repeating, cooking with what was available, people noticing what's changing from season to season, from household to household, from one budget to another. So then the recipe, when it existed, wasn't often the teacher, it was more so the reminder. Again, powerful distinction. So let's talk about the American side of this. One of the foundational books in American food history is American Cookery by Angela Simmons, published in 1796. The Library of Congress describes it as the first cookbook written by an American and published in the United States, and notes that it incorporated ingredients like pumpkin, molasses, and cornmeal into British-derived cooking traditions. And that's a distinction that matters because early American cookbooks weren't trying to be cute or trendy or branded. Instead, they were being very intentional about what cooking looks like in a new place, with new ingredients, new realities, and regional adaptation. Then you move forward into books like The Frugal Housewife by Lydia Child, published in 1829. Even the title tells you what the book was about. Not performance, not aesthetics, not elevated weeknight magic, economy, household management, practical living. And that's another thing that we've lost because older cookbooks weren't just about recipes. They were trying to answer a bigger question of how do we run an entire household? And I think that that's actually a much smarter, comprehensive question than what can I make for dinner tonight? Okay, so here's the part where we arrive at our first little turning point. Because by the late 19th century, the modern recipe format started taking shape. Fannie Farmer's The Boston Cooking School Cookbook, first published in 1896, helped standardize measurements and promote what was called scientific cookery. Now, this is where I want to be fair because that wasn't bad at all. Because standardization helped beginners. It made recipes more repeatable. And it made books easier to use without inherited kitchen knowledge. And that was a real gain, but every gain has a trade-off. Because when recipes became more exact, people became less observant. And as measurements became the authority, judgment started to weaken. Because when everything is broken into precise steps, people stop asking bigger questions. You know, questions like, what is this ingredient doing? How can I replace it? What needs to happen first so that tomorrow is easier? Why is the base even here? What could be the carryovers from this? What's the pattern? Then in 1931, the joy of cooking pushed the modern format even further. The Library of Congress notes that before Irma Rombar's book, many American cookbooks were still basically long paragraphs with vague directions. The joy of cooking helped normalize ingredient lists up top, clear directions, and a more user-friendly voice. It became a massive success and eventually sold nearly 18 million copies. And y'all, believe it or not, I have a copy of that book. It was my Nana's. Now, this is the 1953 edition, but the book had already been out for a little while. And because this was my Nana's, this was a well-loved, stained and sticky finger cookbook. And I just love books that have just lived somewhere for a while. This book still smells like our house. But even this evolution helps cement the idea that cooking knowledge lives in the page. That if you have the right book, the right recipe, the right author, the right list, the right appliance, the right system, then dinner will stop being hard. But for a lot of people, that moment never comes. Because the issue is never that you lacked enough recipes, the issue is that you were never taught to think beyond them. So that is the fallacy of most modern cookbooks. It's that they make you think that you are collecting cooking knowledge, when in fact often you're just collecting dependency and prettier packaging. Because then once you see that, a lot starts to click. Why your cookbook collection is huge, but your fridge is full of waste. Why you can successfully follow recipes for years, but then still not know what to make when life gets weird. Why dinner still feels heavy even as you're surrounded by all of these options. And that's because options are not the same as systems. And a recipe is not the same as a skill. That's the break. That's the shift. And that's where people stop following recipes and start becoming cooks. Let's rewind for a second because before cookbooks became the main character in the kitchen, people were still eating every day, multiple times a day, without a Pinterest board, without a 47-tab recipe search spiral, without standing in front of the fridge like it personally offended them. So what were they doing? Because clearly something was working. Well, that's where the big misunderstanding enters. Because we've been taught to believe that cooking starts with a recipe. Like, that's step one, because before recipes, it's not like people were out here guessing and hoping for the best. That's not true. Cooking didn't start with recipes. Recipes came after cooking. And that one shift in understanding changes everything. People learned how to cook the same way you learn anything that actually sticks. By being in it. They helped, they watched, they repeated, they adjusted. And they were not asking, where's the recipe? No, they were asking, what do we have? What needs to be used first? What stretches the furthest? What feeds the most people? And that's a completely different mindset. That's not recipe thinking. That is household thinking. I mean, you had to because meals weren't isolated events. They were very much connected. Last night's roast became today's soup. Extra bread became tomorrow's breakfast. Bones became broth. Scraps had a job and leftovers had a plan. And nothing started from zero unless it absolutely had to. Because starting from zero every night, that's exhausting. They would have laughed at us, respectfully, but also a little bit not. Now, also let me remind you that there was no out-of-season section at the grocery store. No strawberries in January, no asparagus shipped across the world, and absolutely no, just grab whatever you're craving. But it is because of that that people developed range. You knew how to pivot, you knew substitutions without calling them substitutions. They knew how to stretch, swap, adjust, and make it work. Not because they were culinary geniuses, but because they had to be. And sometimes we forget that when you have to be resourceful, you get really, really good. So if you've ever felt like, well, yeah, I can cook with a recipe, but I can't cook without one, that's not a personal failure. That's a training issue. Okay, so if recipes aren't the foundation, then what is? And what does it actually look like to cook in a way that builds skills instead of dependence? So here's the shift. Cooking is not about making meals. It's about building momentum. That's it. Because people who feel confident in their kitchen aren't better at creating individual meals. No, they're better at connecting them. So here's the part where we've completely lost, and it's that cooking wasn't the skill. Running a kitchen was. Knowing how to turn one ingredient into multiple meals. Sequencing your cooking so that tomorrow is easier. Use what you have before buying or harvesting more. Stretch food without it tasting like a compromise. And feeding people consistently without burning out. That's a system. That ain't something you learn from a cookbook called 30-Minute Creamy Chicken Garlic. So if you take anything from this video, let it be this. Nothing in your kitchen should start at zero more than once. Not every night, not every meal, not every time you cook. Because that is the fastest way to burn out, yet that's the way that most people are cooking. Monday, start from zero. Tuesday, start from zero. Wednesday, start from zero. And that's why by Thursday, you're done. Mentally, physically, emotionally, you're done. So instead, I want you to start thinking in 3 simple layers: a base, a carryover, and a sequence. That's it. So your base is your starting point. This is always going to be your anchor. And it's the thing that you cook once that's going to give you options, not just a dinner, options. And this could look like a batch of ground beef, roasted chicken, a pot of beans, a tray of roasted vegetables, a simple sauce or spread. You're not cooking a meal yet, but what you are doing is creating leverage. So next is your carryover, which is where things start to get easy. Because your carryover is what helps to move things forward and it makes tomorrow faster. And this is where you feel like, oh, I'm not starting over. Leftover protein becomes a new dish. Leftover sauce becomes a shortcut. Your prepped ingredients become assembly instead of effort. And suddenly you're not creating 5 different meals, you're evolving ones. If this is our first time meeting, hi, I'm Cassandra from the blog becomingafarmgirl.com, and I'm here to help you cook with what's in season, on sale, and better yet, already on your shelf. Now the next piece changes everything because this is the sequence. And so instead of asking, what am I making tonight? Instead you're asking, what am I setting up for the next 5 days? And now your week has a rhythm and your meals make sense together. Now your grocery list has a purpose and your leftovers aren't random, they're planned. Let me show you how simple this really is. So let's say that you cook some leg quarters. And let's say that you turn it into a sheet pan meal with roasted vegetables. So then night 2, that same base with some pan drippings turns into some soup. Night 3, you repurpose it into a pot pie bake. Night 4, stretch it with some rice or some quinoa and turn it into a bowl. And night 5, take any and everything that's left, blend it, and bake it into some patties with some sauce. And there you have it, same base, completely different meals, never starting from zero, no decision fatigue, and no wasted food sitting in the back of your fridge, judging you. Like, do you feel that shift? It's the moment where cooking stops feeling like a chore and instead like something you can actually manage. Because now you're not asking, how do I follow this recipe correctly? Now you're asking, how do I use what I've already got started? And the second question is much easier to answer. And also, here's what happens over time. You stop panicking when you're missing an ingredient. You stop relying on exact measurements. You stop relying on your phone every time you cook because you know the role of things. What builds flavor? What adds texture? What stretches a meal? What carries it forward? And that is a very real skill, not memorizing recipes. Because let's be honest, most people don't need more recipes. In fact, we have way more recipes than we'll ever cook in a lifetime. But what you do need is to use what you already have. And this right here, this way of thinking is how I actually cook. It's how I've been cooking on this channel for years, not recipes, not one-off meals. It is a way of cooking that actually works in real life. Because for the longest time, a comment I get a lot is, when are you going to release a cookbook? Do you have a cookbook? Is there a place where I can get all your recipes? And my answer has been, I showed you on the video, because like a cookbook isn't always the solution. And also, I'm not interested in making you more dependent. I want to move the conversation into food frames and how we make judgments in the kitchen. So what I do have is a system, and it's called the Dinner's Done Dispatch. And it's built entirely around what we just talked through. Not a collection of meals, a sequence, 5 dinners, intentionally connected. And every week starts with the base, something you cook once, and you continue to leverage. Each meal is built on the last. And that's how you never start from zero. You're never guessing. You're never wasting food. Instead, you're moving through the week with a plan that actually flows. So here's how you know this works, because it is not just me. Inside the Dinner's Done Dispatch, there are people cooking this way from every kind of lifestyle, different budgets, different diets, different preferences, vegan, vegetarian, high protein, gluten-free, families, singles, busy schedules, tight schedules. And they're all making it work. And it's not because we're following the same recipe. It's because we're following a similar food frame. And truly, that is the difference. Now, this is the part that's been missing the most when it comes to food education. And it's that we cook together, not just passively watching content. We're doing this together. Live workshops, real-time meals, people in their own kitchens figuring it out, asking questions, sharing what's worked. And you get to see how someone else solved the exact problem that you're having. You get to hear, oh, I didn't have that, so I use this. Or, you know what, that turned out completely different, and it was better. And you know, that's how people used to learn. Not alone, not guessing, together. Because here's the thing, a cookbook will give you a finished answer, but it doesn't give you range. It doesn't show you how to pivot, how to think, how to recover when life doesn't go as planned. The Dinner's Done Dispatch does, because it's not built around perfection. It's built around real life. And yes, I have one. I am not a full-time YouTuber. In fact, I have a full-time job outside of my house. I'm a teacher. My husband's in the Navy. And so again, this is like for regular Janes, because the goal of the dispatch is not for you to rely on it for forever. It's for you to become the kind of woman who can walk into her kitchen, look at what she has and say, I know what to do with this. No stress, no guessing, no starting from scratch every single night, just confidence. So let me say this as clearly as possible. This is not just about dinner. This is about how your home runs. Because when your kitchen doesn't work, everything feels harder than it needs to be. You spend more money than what you wanted to. You throw away groceries that you had every intention of using. You think about dinner all day and still don't know what you're making at 5:30. But once you start seeing your kitchen differently, you realize there is a better way. It's learning how to build from a base and leverage your carryovers, how to think in sequences or dinner dominoes, and how to stop cooking one meal at a time and instead set your future self up. So if this video hit home for you, you have 2 different options from here. And the first is start practicing this now. Take what I shared in this video and challenge yourself to stop asking, what recipe should I make tonight? And start asking, what can I cook once that will help me for the next few meals? Start looking for your base. Start looking for your carryover. Start looking at your week as a sequence instead of 5 separate emergencies. And if you want help seeing what this looks like in real life, I already have an entire playlist on this channel where I cook this way. So go watch those videos and study the flow and notice how those meals connect. Notice how nothing goes to waste and how when I come into the kitchen, I'm knocking out 2 and 3 meals in 25 minutes. Or maybe you're watching this and you're thinking, this is exactly what I've been missing. I don't need more cookbooks. I need structure. I need accountability, and I want to cook with people who actually get this. That is exactly why I built the Dinner's Done Dispatch. It's where all of this stops being an idea you agree with and starts being something that you live in your own kitchen. Because your cookbook is likely holding you back more than you think. To get more meal sequencing inspiration, click the video on your screen. I'll see you in my kitchen or garden soon. Take care, friends.